Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for links to some great online retailers. There's also individual links for knives that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a very special knife overview slash presentation to share with you guys. This is a full custom Thorburn L51. Beautiful, beautiful knife. This knife was sent in by at Floydian214 on Instagram. Please give him a follow. It's because of people like him that I'm able to bring you guys daily knife content. It's also because of my generous patrons. Thank you so much for supporting me. If you'd like to support me and you're enjoying the daily knife content on this channel, you can find my link for Patreon right down in the description. And please follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. This is a custom knife. If you are new to my channel and you've not heard my, basically how I do videos on custom knives here, I'll explain it here real quick. This is far beyond the territory of a production knife. Generally on my channel, I do my reviews, I talk about the utilitarian benefits and the value, and the, how it relates to how many, whether or not people, I think, or in a general sense, are actually going to find, utilitarian advantage in the design, right? All of that kind of goes out the window when we talk about a custom knife, because custom knives are, in a lot of ways, functional art, right? There are custom knives out there that are basically just art and not functional at all. That's not really stuff that interests me. You probably won't ever see anything like that on this channel. I'll review knives, if they are functional art. In this case, we have something that is extremely functional, absolutely made out of materials that are more than capable of resiliency in a number of different settings, right? Blade steel that is absolutely heat treated properly and meant to be used. The blade geometry, the grind is absolutely one that is meant to make short work of whatever it is you're doing with it. Handle materials, ergonomics, profile, all that stuff. So for anybody thinking, as knives get more and more expensive, they get less and less and less functional, that couldn't be further from the truth. In some cases that may be the case, but this is absolutely something that if the person who bought it chose to go out and use it, they could. But there is a lot of art in this. There's a lot of the custom maker's heart and soul that goes into it. So when I do videos on custom knives, it is simply a presentation. That's really, that's all the more I'm comfortable doing. This is one of the most intimidating knives that's ever come across my table, because Thorburn is, in all, the absolute definition, right, is being implied here. When I say legendary knife maker, I mean that. This guy started making knives in 1989. By the way, you can get this information that I'm going to kind of gloss over on the Thorburn website, andrethorburn.com, I believe it is, under the About section. I believe he started making knives in 1989. Between 1989 and I think 2006, he was a part of the South African Custom Knife Makers Guild, which is, this is what this is. He's a South African custom knife maker, so this was made in South Africa. He was part of the German Knife Makers Guild, the Italian Knife Makers Guild, and then eventually in 2006, the American Knife Makers Guild. This guy has received so many awards. It's just, it's incomprehensible how masterful this person is when it comes to knife making. After having handled this and experienced it for a while, I don't, believe at all that that's hype. It's just picking this thing up and experiencing it for the few weeks that I've had it. Yeah, this feels like with my limited experience, right? My experience with knives pales in comparison to somebody like this, right? But with my limited experience, it's very easy for me to come to the conclusion this was obviously made by somebody who knows what they're doing, right? So, these are expensive. Like I said, this is a totally different world. Full custom knives are very expensive. What does custom knife mean? It means, well, depending on who you ask, mostly handmade, right? Some people will define it as completely and totally handmade, and what constitutes completely and totally handmade versus not completely, right? Hair splitting. That's been going on for decades, so it's a pointless argument, but yeah, this is a custom knife. There's an enormous amount of time and handwork and human energy, human interaction that goes into something like this. That's just going to cost more than your WE knives, your ZT knives, your Spyderco knives. It simply is, regardless of, materials used, which in this case we do have some pretty exotic materials, right? But much more than that, right? Yeah, there are, if you, if you're new to, if you stumbled across this video, right? I'm going to tell you guys right now that Andre Thorburn custom knives start at, from what I've seen, around $700 knives, and they just go up and up and up, depending on what materials are used and how complicated, you know, the finishes or how intricate the details are, right? How much work is going to go into it. It's obviously going to add price to that. So if you're new to the knife world, you're just stumbling across this video and you're thinking, oh my gosh, who would ever spend $700 on a knife? More people than you could possibly imagine. I'm not trying to be condescending or rude at all, but yeah, if you didn't know that, welcome to the knife world. A lot of people, and for a very long time. But it's different territory, right? People buy knives like this for a different reason than they might buy a Benchmade mini griptilian, right? Or a Ontario rat. It simply is a different territory. People who appreciate the extra work that goes into a knife, beyond the fact that it just is a knife and can cut, these people are paying for much more than that. And they are getting much more than that too. So, different perspectives, right? That's why we do show and tell for stuff like this. All right, let's go ahead and take a measurement on this guy. Not going to be a full, I'm not going to go through everything that I normally do because I really just want to talk about this. The overall length of the L51, and by the way, there are a lot of L models, right? He's got a lot of different models. You can check a lot of these out at bladegallery.com right now. There's a lot of, I mean, 1 through 51 at least, and then there's some other models. So this guy has a ridiculous amount of different models, but this L51 is coming in at about 8.75 inches overall. Your blade length, I'm going to call it from the tip right here, we're going to call it about 3.8. And then your cutting edge is coming in at about 3.6 inches overall. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons here real quick. Up against the Ontario Rat Model 1. Rat 1 is coming in at 8.6 inches overall. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? Spyderco PM2 is coming in at 8.3 inches overall. How about up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue is coming in at 8 inches overall. How about up against the Spyderco Para 3? Spyderco Para 3 coming in at 7.25 inches overall. And last but not least, the Benchmade Mini Griptilian. Mini Griptilian is coming in at 6.75 inches overall. How's the action on this guy? This is running on IKBS. It won't take you long on the internet if you search Andre Thorburn knives to find somewhere, anywhere, someone talking about how amazing the action is. I've handled a lot of knives. Obviously, there's a lot out there that I haven't experienced, but, you know, like Beg custom knives, Shirogorovs, a lot of knives that, you know, boast excellent action. And truthfully, in a lot of ways, we are in the same territory in terms of the fall shuttiness. It is completely and totally frictionless. It falls shut effortlessly. And I'm convinced that no matter how thin or no matter how small this blade was, this blade does not rely on gravity to fall shut. A lot of knives that achieve that type of action do, but that's not what's happening here. It's essentially the incredible attention to detail. The combination of the IKBS, the tolerances of everything, the surfaces of everything, every last little detail was obviously, you know, accounted for. And that's why it's falling shut, right? Now, I've said this many times, you know, in terms of a knife that I'm going to carry, while I appreciate fall shut action, I actually prefer a knife that won't fall completely shut that readily because I don't want to cut my fingers. But this is not a review. This is something, you know, a knife that feels like this is obviously a knife that so much has gone into, right? It's just amazing that it's achieving that. But there is something different about it. I mean, I'm actually turning this knife a little bit sideways, trying to detect an area where the surface is uneven somewhere. And it isn't. It's the area where the detent ball passes over the face of the blade is so even and so smooth and so perfect that it takes so little to get this thing to fall. We're at such a slight angle there. It's crazy. You do not have to hold this knife straight up and down to get it to fall shut. It will fall shut on its side. This is crazy. This is unbelievably good. On top of that, you'll read about the Thorburn thwack or thwap. Somebody actually on another YouTube video described it as a swack. It's ridiculous hair splitting when it comes to describing what it sounds like. But I think swack does it justice. Ready? There is a s right at the beginning. Swack. God, there's no way for me to perfectly describe that for you guys. This thing simply does have perfect action. Andre Thorburn has been described as making knives with perfect action since before the knife community, the vast majority of the knife community even became aware that action, right? Like if I'm thinking about when I first started thinking like, oh, the flipping action, the detent, right? It's tuned probably like the ZT0562 back in 2013. That was probably my first experience with, you know, a properly tuned detent and the, you know, the thwack and that's not saying that's right when it took off, but maybe a couple of years before that when people started getting really like particular and finicky about. I think this guy had the action on his knives perfected well before then. And anyways, that's the information that I've read, is that this guy was like a wizard of action before it was even a thing. So, I don't know. You know, I haven't been involved in the knife world long enough to say definitively that that is the case. But what I can say is that this guy's reputation is so overly positive amidst the knife community, and obviously this guy has such an amazing legacy. It just makes sense. Picking this thing up, it's like, oh, I mean, of course this was made by somebody who is just a master of their craft. It's amazing. All right, how long have we been talking about the action? I think it's justified. We're talking about Andre Thorburn, absolutely. Let's see here. What should we do next? I'm not going to do a hardware check. I can tell you guys right now that the pivot is a T8. I'm just not going to touch this hardware with my tools. There are a lot of screws on this guy. They're T6. Listen, it's a custom knife. This is my general review process and my little wants, and it's hard to apply it here, right? Because he was trying to achieve a particular aesthetic. And when it comes to a custom knife, I mean, obviously this guy, if he wanted to, could create, you know, a design where it has minimal hardware and it's really easy for the end user to take apart, right? It's not like that slipped his mind and he felt like he needed that. If you look at his other designs, obviously you know, the placement of the hardware, how much hardware there is, right? How it looks, all of these little things, he's trying to achieve a particular aesthetic, right? He's not trying to, you know, appease Metal Complex and his ridiculous rules about minimal hardware and the size of the heads, right? So I will critique that on a lot of knives, and a lot of people you might think less of me for not critiquing it here. Obviously, if I was having this knife made for myself, I wouldn't want so many screws, right? But there is an interesting aesthetic created with all of these screws right here, right? So while I don't necessarily consider this a benefit in utility, we got to remember we're looking at a custom knife that a lot of people might actually, despite it being something that you absolutely can go out and use, might actually put it in a display case, right? And even if they did want to take it apart, there is a lot of hardware, but you can still do it. So I guess do with that information what you will. It's really, that's part of the reason why it's so intimidating to review something like this, right? Because my critiques start to feel a little bit meaningless. But yeah, there's a lot of hardware, I guess, is what I'm saying here. But it is interesting, the aesthetic that's created with all of the hardware, right? And the slight shadow boxing and the bronze titanium liners, which, you know, in this case are bronze. But in a lot of his other knives, you know, might be blue or purple, right? More or less polished. I mean, it's not, the L51 does not just come in this form. There are a wide variety of different materials that are used for the inlays, right? He does some bolster work with zirconium. I've seen like the really intricate file work and the intricate like etching, or not, is it not etching? Oh, well, it would be, yeah, I guess it'd be like hand etching and things, there's a word there that's escaping my mind. But anyways, more or less detail is present on the L51 and other L series models that is just amazing. So many different setups, different backspacer materials, more or less work on the backspacer, right? Different finishes, different blade steels. I believe this is CTS XHP. I know he works with N690, CTS XHP, M390, Damasteel, Damascus, right? This guy's a true custom knife maker and will work apparently with so many different materials to achieve, you know, all of these different aesthetic forms throughout all of his different models. But really, really cool. Lots of hardware. It's all bronze. Appears to be at least these back here may be titanium screws. They may be steel screws with just a bronze, you know, heat finish applied. I'm not really sure. I'm guessing the screws holding the scales in are probably steel. But you know, truthfully, I just don't know that. It's hard to say with all of the different materials and the different designs. It's really difficult to say exactly what it is. Pocket clip back here is beautiful 3D milled titanium. I kind of would have liked to see the pocket clip be bronze, but okay, you know, whatever. It's got the ceramic ball on it. Truthfully, in and out of the pocket, it's no problem at all, and it carries, you know, reasonably deep, not deep or shallow. But I guess we're still on the hardware check. It's easy to get carried away with little things like that because I'm just not doing a typical review. This isn't necessarily a big, thick, chunky knife. The blade stock is probably coming in somewhere around 165 thousandths, possibly even thicker than that. We'll take a quick look. For anybody who's wondered, why is there tape on your calipers? This is why. Because we're looking at an expensive custom knife. Yeah, okay, 160 thousandths on the blade stock. The inside here, we have titanium liners. It doesn't look like there's any milling. I'm not really overly concerned with whether or not there's milling on a custom knife. Truthfully, I'll just let you guys know what it weighs. Probably 5.5 ounces. Nope, less than that. 4.8 ounces. Okay, that's not bad considering, you know, for people who care, right? These are a little bit. Weight is not meaningless, right? But it feels a little bit more meaningless when I'm looking at a knife like this. But anyways, as far as those ratios go, it's not bad considering the blade length, right? Pretty good. Materials on this guy, I believe this is some sort of possibly desert ironwood. There's a lot of different wood that he works with, and I am not an expert when it comes to identifying, you know, wood material on a knife. What it looks like is polished black micarta and then ironwood that's been laid into the micarta. And I'm going to show you guys the seam work here. It just feels like one continuous. There is absolutely no difference. The only thing I can feel is the transition to the hardware, right? To these areas that are good. This area right here, yeah, fully contoured, perfectly laid in. This is masterful, right? If I didn't know better, I'd just assume it was all one piece of material that was just painted to look like it. It's not. This is inlay work, masterful inlay work. It's unbelievable. It's just insane. I've handled a lot of knives that I would, you know, define as seamless, you know, between, you know, when we change from one material to another, as far as like a material that's laid into another material, right? I have a new standard for that term now. This knife is going to make me a little more picky in how I, you know, define that. This file work back here, absolutely beautiful. We have bronze, sort of a combination of like maybe a less reflective flat surface, and then the bowls in here are polished, and it gives you this beautiful sort of kind of 3D element to it. Really, really cool. Backspacer, I'm going to guess, is also micarta. I noticed, I think it was underneath the, yeah, right here. Can we see in there? I think that says 5, and it's upside down. So I wonder if we can show, yeah, here we go. You can see it right there. 5. I'm going to guess there was 5 in this particular, maybe this scale material in combination blade steel, right? So this is, or maybe this isn't, maybe it's not 5. Maybe there was 13 of them, and this is number 5. This is number 5 in a set of, you know, this setup. I'm going to guess that that's the way that he operates, is that he'll use a certain material on a number of knives, and then maybe do, you know, maybe it's through different L series knives, or maybe, you know, 5 of them that are exactly the same, or 10 of them exactly the same, and he'll number them, right? He'll do short runs of a particular, you know, style, and then move on to something else. I have no idea if he takes custom orders or not. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier in the video or not, but you can check a lot of this stuff out at bladegallery.com. I have no affiliate program set up with them. That's just where I found him. And then you can get more information about his custom knives on his website. I don't know if he takes custom orders or not. These start, as far as I can tell, knives like this or in this tier across his models start somewhere around $700, and they obviously go up from there. I had probably also mentioned that earlier in the video. Depending on how complicated the work is, you know, the materials that are being used, right, finish work, things like that, you're going to pay more money the more time that it takes to create the item. That's simply how it's going to work. This thing, beyond all of those little things, you know, what I find most impressive is that if this were, for me, some people have no problem taking an 800, this is, I'm going to guess this knife costs somewhere around $850 to $900. There are people out there who will not flinch at taking a knife out that costs that much and just using it and doing whatever they want with it, right? And there are people out there who will use $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 knives the same way. Me, I kind of draw the line around $500. I've got a couple of $500 users, right? And I won't use them to, like, you know, pry bricks apart. But I'll use them like a knife, no problem. This knife is absolutely in a territory where it's going to be very difficult for me to go out and use it, right? We're looking at this beautiful near mirror finish on the flats, hand rubbed satin on the blade. Just beautiful, right? The inlay work, how beautiful the materials look, the bronze on the titanium. It's just so beautiful that it would make me reserved in wanting to use it. But closing my eyes and feeling the ergonomic lines in this thing and where my hands naturally rest, I'm going to make another point at just how amazing this knife maker is. This thing is so absolutely perfect in the human hand. There are no hot spots in this thing anywhere. It feels so unbelievably well balanced. It's just crazy. The balance point is right there where you're going to put your... there we go. Sorry, I'm at an angle here. You can see it's trying to teeter back and forth between blade and butt. But right there where you put your index finger. This blade feels so ready to go to work. It is so easy to disengage. There's no lock stick whatsoever. There's a nice little, relief cut right there where the liner's raised above this side so that you can easily get your finger in there. Jimping on the flipper tab is just perfect. Sides have been nicely knocked down. It's not aggressive, but you go to flip it and bam, right? Jimping back here, it's definitely going to catch your thumb, but it's not so aggressive that it's obnoxious or sharp, right? So you could work with this knife continuously for long periods of time. Corners up here have been nicely knocked down just ever so slightly, so they're not unnecessarily sharp up here. The edge is absolute perfection. Absolute perfection, and it does come to a nice laser beamy, nice performance-oriented edge. This blade is going to make short work of anything that it comes in contact with, right? Considering the materials that he used, I think maybe even some CPM 154, right? He's working with a wide range of different steels. I know somebody's going to go, N690, I can get that in a budget. Listen, as far as like heat treatments go with custom knife makers, you look at his heat treat targets for these different steels, right? His N690 is going to perform way different than what we're used to in the budget knife world. His M390 is going to, he's aiming for 62 on his M390. You're not getting 60. I mean, even if, some companies in some areas, like in the $200 to $300 range are, saying, oh, we aim for 59 to 62, right? You're probably not getting 62 all the time. On knives like this, you're going to get an amazing heat treat. You're going to get maximum performance. If you're looking for edge retention, you're going to get that, right? He it's a wide range of different steels that he works with, and the ones that he, works with, he's going to make sure are heat treated properly. You're not going to find any information out there about an Andre Thorburn not being heat treated properly. It's just not going to be the case. That's even that part. There's extensive time and energy that goes into that process. I don't work for him, right? But just reading, just looking around, hearing what people say, talking with people who know more than I do, which there are plenty. Yeah, that's the general consensus, is that there's just so much more, those little teeny tiny things, so much more that goes into this stuff. So you have a choice in terms of what you want, for the steel. Centering on this, obviously, it seems silly to go over it. Centering is absolutely perfect. Lockup, right? Titanium liner lock. Doesn't need a lock bar in, so you can see the geometry of that lockup is just spot on, right? Full surface contact on the liner, but nice and early, so you get, exceptionally solid lockup. I really don't even want to touch this, but I guess I will, and then wipe my fingerprints off. No blade play, up, down, left, or right. Absolutely none. And then your stop pin, I believe, yeah, it's fixed and internal. Can we get the light to reflect off of it? Probably not. The stop pin is right here, and it stays in position as the knife moves around. So there's a slot cut in the blade, and then the it catches the blade and stops it in the open and closed position. This is just beautiful and extremely functional. Every last little part of this knife was, even if Mr. Thorburn thinks, like, the people who are trying to buy my knives really want to appreciate them for the beauty and the craftsmanship, right? He's still made a completely and totally functional and ergonomic design, right? It just adds to the infinite satisfaction of this. Here's the crazy thing. I'm gushing over this, and I'm not even a wood guy. I'm not really crazy about wood. There's too much to appreciate here to get hung up on that. For me, it's just, it's so excellent in so many ways. It's just amazing how effortless it is to disengage this, to flip it, right? To use it, to wield it, to hold it, right? I mean, this thing, it just feels like an extension of the human hand. And I've said that before about some other knives, but man, my bar just keeps being set higher and higher and higher. This is just absolutely beautiful and amazing. If you're a collector, you're going to find a lot of joy here. If you're a knife enthusiast, you're going to find a lot of joy here. If you're a knife user, you're going to find a lot of joy here, right? If this aesthetic is not your thing, he's got 50 plus different L series models along with a whole bunch of other ones. And then he works with so many different inlay materials, handle materials, right? Different polishes, different finishes, different blade steels, right? You're bound to find something, right? The part that's going to hang most people up is the price. It's either something that you can justify or something that you can't, right? And that's okay. Truthfully, this is outside of my comfort zone in terms of my own spending habits, but can I appreciate and understand the work that went into it, how they came to the conclusion, you know, this is what we're going to charge for this? Honestly, I think it's kind of incredible that you can get some of his knives for around $700 to $800. I've handled knives that cost way more money that are nowhere near, like, stuff that I enjoyed. I've handled knives that I really liked for $1,200, $1,300, $1,500, $2,000, $3,000 in some cases. I've handled a lot of knives that I really like that just don't hold a candle to this in terms of, you know, just the feeling of overall quality, the action, right? These are on a level. If you have ever been tempted to spend serious money on a knife and you want to be completely and totally satisfied with all of the elements that you expect, right? You want to feel that $700, $800, $900, you know, purchase price, that $1,000 purchase price. You want to feel like that was money that was spent on something real. I'm not saying that other knife makers don't do this as well and you shouldn't spend money on them. No, but as far as all those little teeny tiny things that modern knife enthusiasts look for, or knife users or collectors, I think you're going to find it all in a knife like this. The L51, the only L series knife. I'm saying L series, I'm not saying that's actually what it's called. Everything that I'm saying here as far as, you know, like, this is just my opinion. You know, very, very little of this has been factual. The parts of this video that are factual have come directly from the website, right? Everything else is my opinion and, you know, assumption based on other things that I've handled here. But yeah, you're gonna find satisfaction in this. If you've ever been nervous about spending $800, most of the knives on Blade Gallery seem to be around the $800 to $1,000 mark. If you've ever been nervous about spending that much on a knife, but you're curious, right? Maybe you've been hovering around the $500, $600 mark, right? $700. Are you gonna get what you want? Right? Is this gonna feel like it's worth it? Yeah. Yeah, you're going to be pretty happy. If I've got other people down in the comments section who have owned or handled Andre Thorburn knives, I'm going to guess they're going to be echoing a lot of my thoughts and probably filling in a lot of the gaps here, because even though I've been talking for nearly 30 minutes, I can guarantee I have not touched on every last little thing. This is wonderful. This is one of the coolest knives that I've had on the channel. This will be going in my custom knives playlist. It'll be going in my favorite knives of all time playlist. Absolutely. This is easily one of my favorite knives I've ever handled. I would love to have something like this with an intricate, you know, zirconium bolster and carbon fiber inlay. I would just die for that. Zirconium, carbon fiber, and probably the bronze. I would want the bronze, maybe a bronze pivot and a bronze pocket clip. But this is beautiful. I would just die for something like that. Absolutely wonderful. Thanks again, Floydian214, for letting me take a look at this guy. Guys, that's going to be pretty much it for this kind of stumbly presentation. I hope I did this knife justice, but as per usual, I'm sure that there are things that I left out. In any case, I hope that it was at least mildly entertaining. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram. If you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.